Hello students, I welcome you to the Analyst by Vajiram and Ravi for 19th March 2025, where we will be discussing 7 most important articles from the Hindu and the Indian Express which are extremely crucial for your prelims and for your UPSC CSE examination. In the first section of analysis, we'll be discussing firstly the ocean front, wherein we'll be discussing mainly the main debates and the issues in the Indo-Pacific region. In the second article, we'll be discussing about the need for decriminalization of various laws in the country via the Jan Vishwas Bill 2025. And here in the second section of the simplified articles, we'll be looking into 5 more articles which are extremely crucial for the upcoming prelims 2025 examination. So stay tuned. So hello students, I hope you all are doing well. We have only 67 days to the UPSC prelims 2025 examination, and also in this section of the discussion today, we are going to take up many important articles which are factual in nature, where we'll be looking at major provisions, major articles which are extremely important for the revision for the prelims examination. So with this, we'll be starting with the very first article here. This article is focused on the Indian Ocean region. The Indian Ocean region is always in the news. There are a plethora of articles always in the newspapers, in the Hindu and in the Indian Express. We'll be looking particularly in this article from the perspective of Arun Prakash, who is a very distinguished author when it comes to Indian Ocean region, Indo-Pacific region and such related areas. So we'll be starting with this. Here we'll be discussing about what is the significance of the IOR region for India, what are the various issues that India is facing in recent times, what are the initiatives that we have already done, and what should be the initiative that we should be going to do in the future. And when it comes to the syllabus mapping for your prelims examination, all aspects related to mapping are extremely crucial, because in prelims we have seen in the various past year questions, the mapping aspects particularly in this region become extremely crucial. Also in GS2, we need to be aware of the various politics and the policies of the various developing and the developed countries, wherein we have to look into the various policies of China, of US, of India, and how it pertains to our own interest. So we'll be starting straight away by focusing on this beautiful map. When we look at this particular map here, we find that our beloved country India is located at the junction of the Indian Ocean, right? Where we find that there are so many countries which are surrounding the ocean, and India is at the hem of the ocean here, where we have to understand that the Indian Ocean is actually constituting 1/5 of the total oceanic waters in the entire world, and it is considered as one of the youngest ocean too. And when it comes to the significance based on the population and the GDP that the countries surrounding the Indian Oceans contribute, we have to understand that this region itself and the countries themselves have 65% of the global population, contributing to 63% of the world's GDP. So we can understand that we have here not only demographics but also economic significance in this particular region. Also, when I talk about the significance here very briefly, when we talk about the significance, we cannot ignore the historical achievements that India have had in the past in this region, be it the Chola Empire or be it the various marine military ecosystems which are developed by the other dynasties. You can mention in the comments which are some of the other dynasties apart from the Cholas. We did a tremendous effort in this Indian Ocean region by spreading their kingdoms across the Southeast Asian regions too. So we have to understand that we have a strong historical connect. But apart from that, when we come to the recent times, we find that this particular region is very important, for the various sea routes and the trade routes it is having, right? Particularly when we talk about the 4 critical waterways, it is having the Bab el-Mandeb, it is having the Suez Canal, Strait of Hormuz and the Strait of Malacca, all in this region, where it is actually leading to one of the busiest trade routes in the entire world. And that is why the Pacific Ocean and the Indian Ocean here, right, and the linkages between them and the trade routes between Indian Ocean and also to the rest of the world via Europe, right, they are extremely crucial for the world economy to be sustained. And that is why any conflict that takes place in the Arab countries or in the Middle East, they become flag points for global concerns. So here we also have to understand that Indian Ocean is also a treasure trove for heavy minerals, for various polymetallic nodules, for it is actually the hotbed of the deep sea minerals too. That is why many countries, particularly us and also the various other countries, even China, is interested to mine in this particular region. Finally, we also are seeing right now that Indian Ocean region is gradually becoming a theater of power dynamics, be it India, be it China, be it even the US, who is sending its vessels over a period of time to showcase its military dominance, or say to showcase its presence in this region. We cannot ignore the importance of Indian Ocean region. Particularly now, when I particularly focus on India and the significance of Indian Ocean region for us, we have to bring back the K.M. Panikkar's essay on the Indian Ocean, which was actually published in the 1940s, right, wherein he was one of the very first public intellectuals. He was actually a very well-known historian, diplomat, who showcased the importance of the Indian Ocean region for India. He told that obviously the Indian Ocean region is actually a very important region for all of the countries here, but for India, we must be trying to capitalize on the strategic location of the ocean. Right? And also over a period of time, we have seen that during the Cold War days, India was actually hesitant to let any other countries in its own backyard of the Indian Ocean region. So that is why in the Cold War time, India did not encourage too much of presence of other countries in the region. But after the globalization that took place after the dismantling of the USSR and the subsequent conclusion of the Cold War, we have found that over a period of time the development of the sea routes became much more prominent, and India became a much more integral part in the progress of the Indian Ocean region. So that is where we find that as of now, India is dependent on 80% of its energy imports, specifically from the Middle East, via this region. And if any conflict pertains to this region, we have seen in the recent times how India faced crucial energy supply constraints. Also, we have to understand that this region is consisting of many regional partners, such as Maldives, such as Mauritius, such as the various Indonesian and various other Southeast Asian countries, right? We also have various island nations to the south of our country. Even we have Sri Lanka. So we understand that India is actually a kind of an established nation in this region, and being an established nation, being a emerging economy, being in a developed country, we have to understand India often extends out various assistance to this particular regional countries too. In cases of even tsunamis which took place in 2004, India have had assisted various island countries for various humanitarian assistance and various infrastructural assistance in the region. We also cannot underscore or undermine India's efforts during the COVID-19 pandemic also, wherein India via the Sagar policy helped so many countries in the region. So that is why we have to understand, be it military, be it political, be it diplomatic, be it even the soft power dynamics, Indian Ocean region is extremely crucial. But here, the author is highlighting various issues that we are facing right now in this region. The first issue, or the first set of issues, have actually come out from the statements that our External Affairs Minister Subramaniam Jaishankar has made at the recent Indian Ocean Conference at Muscat right now. Now in the comments, can anyone tell me where Muscat is located? Because mapping, again I am telling you, are important for your prelims examination. Now according to our External Affairs Minister, the first issue is the Middle East conflict that is going on between Israel and Palestine. So that is causing a concern in the energy supply route. Secondly, we also have various maritime threats posed by the Houthi rebels, which emanate from the Saudi and the Yemen region, right? Also, we have the various South China Sea tensions going on between Philippines, between China, between the other countries in the region, where China is trying to claim various islands in this particular South China Sea. So these are the various issues here, which has been highlighted directly at the IOC conference. Apart from this, the author has highlighted some of the other sets of issues. The author is highlighting particularly to the fact that our Ministry of Defense, which must be very present in this region via Navy, via via Air Force and via various other military presence, Well, it is doing so, but the lack of coordination that we are having, for example, the lack of coordination between the Ministry of Defense and the Ministry of External Affairs is visibly seen sometimes, where we have to understand the various data and inputs which are not given sometimes by the MEA, Ministry of Defense, causes some concerns. Secondly, we have so many fora or forums or organizations in the Indian Ocean region which is kind of not operating as of now to its optimum level, such as the SARC, such as the BIMSTEC, such as the IPOI, Colombo Security, Conclave, and various other regional institutions which are particularly formed to boost the regional cooperation in this region. But over a period of time, due to the lack of leadership, due to the lack of cooperation, due to also the lack of regional cooperation and lots of issues between the countries, for example, the recent issues in Bangladesh, or for example, the recent India out campaign in Maldives. So these are the various issues that we have to keep in mind, which is not letting this regional forum function properly. Next, we have the US also causing some indirect issues. How? Because we have to understand that United States right now is kind of having its own grand ambition of progressing its own nation, that is making America great again, right? So we have to understand that the US narrative over a period of time will be becoming much more sharper, much more stronger, and that is why US is focusing more on Indo-Pacific rather than or say the Indian Ocean region, where US likes to see this Indian Ocean region coupled with the Pacific Ocean too, right? But for us, our immediate concern is protecting and securing our interests in the Indian Ocean region. But obviously we have strong partnerships, strong collaboration with the US, but US likes to see an extended version of the Indian Ocean region primarily, and then on the Indian Ocean region. So that is what we have to keep in mind, that Indo-Pacific is a term which was coined by Karl Haushofer, and here the focus is more from the US on the Indo-Pacific rather than the IOR. Apart from this, we have regular other threats such as piracy, cyber security attacks, and armed robbery, which has increased 20% in 2023. So these are the various issues that our private sector is also facing whenever we are shipping at some some goods to the African nations or say the Southeast Asian nations where piracy attacks are taking place. Also, we find that our beloved friend China, right? They love us so much that they do not want to leave us alone in this region. They time and again send some military ships, military vessels, and they try to show that we are there, in your background, in your neighborhood. So that we have to understand that Chinese aggressive actions via its military presence in this region is obviously always seen. China is having the interest of having deep sea mining in the region. That is understood. But also we have to understand that China follows something which we know as the string of pearls policy, where alongside the major oil shipping lanes we have to understand in this region, which is crisscrossing the Indo-Pacific to Indian Ocean region, right, to the Atlantic region, which is the shipping lane here. So the maritime Silk Route of China, that is a string of pearls, is also present across this region. What China has done across this region, it has actually tried to debt trap various African nations and are trying to have strategic ownership of various ports, of various aspects alongside the region. So China is giving debt to various countries alongside the African nations, alongside even the Southeast Asian region, and trying to capture some strategic locations. And here, if China is trying to capture these strategic locations, it is trying to encircle us, India, into a very tight spot. Finally, we also have various geopolitical tensions such as Maldives in recent times. We also have the recent ongoing issue with Bangladesh, which is a very crucial, important situation or say location for India to connect to the Southeast Asia, right? We have the various projects such as Kaladan multimodal project, which will be kind of going from India to, from the Bay of Bengal to the Myanmar region, where we have to understand that the cooperation of Bangladesh is important, cooperation of Sri Lanka is important, but these are the countries which have seen, flip-flops in diplomacy, against India. right? So we have some issue with our neighbors too. And finally, the perennial issues of climate change is always there. Be it the warming waters of Bay of Bengal, Arabian Sea, where we have frequent cyclones and also cyclones during non-seasons. Also, we have the issue of rising amount of plastic waste in this region. So these are posing issues on the climate change side. But we have to keep in mind, India knows that we have this kind of issues. That is why New Delhi has been focusing on various recent initiatives. Firstly, we have the Sagar initiative, which is trying to have a unified view of the Indian Ocean and the Indian Ocean region nations. We also have the Sagarmala project in our country, where we are trying to modernize our ports, modernize our coastline region, where we can easily connect with the Southeast Asian countries, the South Asian nations, and also the various Indian Ocean regions if we have better ports. Now these are the developments that India is doing over a period of time. Also, I have mentioned about the Kaladan multimodal project, where we are connecting Kolkata with Myanmar via this Bay of Bengal, right? So this is where we are trying to develop sea-to-way port in Myanmar. Recently also, India have had significant strides to interconnect the region here. So we are trying to build a multimodal transport, where we are trying to connect Kolkata with Northeast India via Myanmar, where the cooperation of Myanmar is extremely important. We are trying to achieve this over a period of time, despite the various issues which are ongoing in the region of Myanmar too. Can you let me know what is actually the issue recently which is ongoing in Myanmar in the comments below? And nextly, when I'm focusing on some other infrastructural projects, we have covered this in the previous analyst sections also, that we are trying to build a transshipment hub for the various military vessels and also the various commercial vessels in the Great Nicobar Islands. So this is also the Great Nicobar project, which we popularly known as, where we are developing airports, where we are developing military establishments, where we are trying to view the islands right now, even an extended view of the Lakshadweep Islands, when we are trying to build the military presence of India in the region. Next, we also have had procured, we have also tried to procure from other countries, various aircraft carriers, right, such as the INS Vikrant, and also drones, and also the underwater vehicles, and various other sensitive equipments, even the Tejas for aircraft. So where we are trying to have better amount of naval presence in the region. Also, we are trying to boost our maritime domain awareness over a time, because we have to know about the various movements in the IOR region, for which India set up the Information Fusion Center of the IOR, the National Maritime Domain Awareness, and finally the ISRO and the Government of India in collaboration also launched the OceanSat-3 satellite, which is extremely crucial for having an an overarching view on our Indian Ocean region. Apart from this, we also regularly conduct the Malabar exercise. In the comments, you let me know which are the participating countries in this. Also, India is trying to rope in more like-minded nations, particularly the Western countries, in our Malabar exercise. Apart from this, we have had various other initiatives, such as promoting blue economy, promoting deep sea mining in the region. Also, we have had various amendments to our offshore mining acts in the recent time, which was covered in the previous analyst sessions also. We have also extended many amounts of, say, humanitarian assistance over a period of time, right? We have also tried to build various good partnerships with reference to payment modes, such as spreading RuPay transactions, and also having new free trade agreements with Maldives and various other like-minded nations, where we are trying to boost economic cooperation with them too. But we have to understand that these things are not enough, specifically when we have looked at various other issues, for which we have to look ahead and find some solutions. The first thing is that India should be utilizing its soft power initiatives. I have already told in the beginning about the Chola Empire, the Chola roots, right? So these are the various regions which are important for the prelims examination for our mapping purposes. Please do ensure that we know all of these locations and how Chola Empire over a period of time extended its empire to Southeast Asian countries. So we must be utilizing the old traditional connect that we have with the region. Secondly, when it comes to hard power, we must be balancing hard power with soft power. When it comes to hard power, we must not be shying away from showcasing our naval prowess in the region. Thirdly, we also need to have a whole of government approach. We cannot have lack of coordination between various sectors of our ministries. So that is where the coordination aspect, a whole of government approach must be given, where not only defense ministry, external ministry should be here, or we also must be having convergence with them, with the Ministry of Shipping, Ministry of Agriculture and Farmers Welfare, even the fisheries and so on. And also we have to have say coordination with the state governments too. Next, we also have to develop a comprehensive marine strategy, right? For example, we have the NATO, right, which is looking at the Atlantic region, and here we have some regional, say, countries which are a part of this maritime security aspect, right? We also have the ASEAN countries, which are looking at the collaboration in the Southeast Asian region. So we need to have a comprehensive maritime strategy, which is kind of very active, for which we need to lessen our regional disputes. Finally, we must be trying to reviving the regional institutions which are not functioning well as of now. So here, according to this, we have a 2015 PYQ from prelims. Do attempt it. Let me know what is the answer here. And also there is a mains practice question for all of you. In the introduction, you can directly start with our external minister Jai Shankar's quotations on the recent outcomes on the Indian Ocean region. With this, I'll be now moving on to the next one. Rohini Nilekani and Mani Savarwal makes a very good point that we must be trying to have better laws for better societies. And in this article, the main crux of this article is that we have the particular Jan Vishwas Bill 2025, where this is a Jan Vishwas 2.0 bill, where we are trying to decriminalize various redundant laws. So this is the discussion which we will be focusing on, the need for good laws for good societies. This is important for prelims, mainly from polity and governance aspect, and also for GS2, where we have to focus on important aspects of governance, where we have various laws in our country where we need to make them much more simple, and also the importance of the laws and functions and regulations on our Indian economy, because we have to understand that be it laws, rules, orders, whatever it is, right, the economy depends on the certainty of laws, on the good quality of laws, because business people, investors, they always seek some countries where the laws are proportionate to the crime or say the offense which are committed. But in India, we have to understand, firstly, we have to look at this important study by the VD Center for Legal Policy. Here the data is very important for all of you. Here it is said that we have around 882 central laws, and out of this 370 laws have criminal provisions. Now we have to understand right now the prime purpose of law in our country or in any country per se. See, laws are there to restrict us from committing some offenses. Obviously, if the law is strong, and also the society of our world or of our country is kind of obeying the laws, then we should not have any problems. But obviously, we have so many anti-social elements in the society who do not listen to the social conditions, to the legal conditions and so on. So that is why we need to have some fines, penalties, imprisonments, and even in the severe cases, rarest of rare cases, even death penalties. But it should not be the case that the majority of the laws must be having criminal provisions. The laws must be having a deterrent provisions by a stringent fines, penalties, by monetary compensation and so on, right? Immediately we cannot say that we must be imprisoning someone. We must be trying to have say life imprisonment or death penalties for someone, right? Firstly, we must be trying to apply the stringent monetary penalties. And over a period of time, if we impose financial penalties on people, people will automatically improve their behavior over a period of time, right? Obviously, there will be some immediate cases, antisocial cases of murders, rapes and so on, where we need to punish them with severity. But even we have some cases, for example, if someone is seen milking a cow or buffalo on the Indian streets, they can be arrested. And this can be a criminal offense. Also, if you are simply storing e-cigarettes and also not consuming that, right, that can be an offense. Obviously, we have to understand smoking is injurious to health and everything, but storing sometimes have been led to various arrests. So these are the various aspects where we have seen. Also, you can read the various other myriad provisions here, due to which we have some criminal provisions. And we have to understand that out of this, many laws, correct, around, there are 5,333 crimes which attract jail terms. There are around 900 crimes which attract mandatory minimum jail terms, right? Then we have life imprisonment, death penalty. So see, these are actually very stringent over a period of time, right? And also that is why it is said by many experts that our current legal system is extremely punitive in nature, and it is extremely punishing in nature, and this is actually degrading the quality of life in the country. And here we have to understand that most laws as of now, according to the VD Center study here, are unrelated to the heinous crimes, correct? And also, if you can look at this example, are these heinous crimes? No, right? Heinous crimes are murders, heinous crimes are rapes. So these crimes must be separated, and also the punishment must be proportional to the crime committed or the offense committed, right? Now, we also have seen in many laws, right, there are disproportionate punishment which are not in proportion to the offense which are committed. Also, many laws are archaic in nature, or they are redundant at all. I mean, our societies have progressed over a period of time, technology have improved, but still there are various crimes which are, charged based on the previous times, previous eras. There are various colonial laws also which must be amended over a period of time. Next, we also have seen that the police tries to arrest people, but final rate of conviction is very low. And also we have seen on the other side, there are high numbers of under trials in the country. That is 75% of the prisoners are under trials according to government data. So what they are suffering for, what they are in the jail for some trials which are going on in the court, for which they are not even passed a sentence by the judge. So they are wasting their lives over a period of time, and all of these things are leading to the lack of business opportunities in the countries in some aspects, such as labor laws, such as taxation laws, which are so complex, which are so full of loopholes that people do not even try to wrap their brain over this kind of laws, right? So that is where we have to understand these affect the ease of doing business, and most importantly, ease of living in the country too. And finally, why all this takes place? Because we understand that in India, the common Indian citizen is not aware of the legal rights, the constitutional provisions, and so on. So all of these have created such an ecosystem where the administration, where the legal system tries to oppress the innocent civilians. So therein, the government has acknowledged this over a long period of time. The present government over a period of time have consolidated several laws, several provisions such as GST, such as Insolvency Bankruptcy Code, and various other provisions which are also, for example, say the rationalizing of the IPC, Indian Penal Code, the CRPC, and so on. Right? So the government have been taking various steps to consolidate and modernize some laws. In the same spirit, the Jan Vishwas Amendment of Provisions Act 2023, mind it is 2023, 2 years ago, in which the government tried to decriminalize 180 offense across 42 laws such as the Indian Forest Act, the Air Prevention Control Act, right, the IT Act of 2000, the Environment Protection Act, right, we also have the Copyright Act, Motor Vehicles Act, Railways Act, and so on. So there are 42 laws where Indian government tried to rationalize and decriminalize various offenses which are extremely punitive in nature, because we have seen the various negative consequences, right? A huge number of under trials, low conviction rate, innocent people put in jail, and also the crimes are not proportionate, right, to the offenses. So this is why the decriminalization was started in this 2023 Amendment Act, where complete removal or replacement of imprisonment with fines were done. I told this, right, that we can actually punish one person with heavy monetary fines. We need not imprison that person for such silly reasons or for such less serious crimes. So that is why we have to understand that fines are enough in some cases. Also, we need not arrest people straight away. Correct? That is why compounding of offenses in some cases were introduced, where earlier, these particular crimes were non-compounding in nature. Next, it is also removing all offenses and penalties under the Indian Post Office Act of 1898. Look at this date. It is the act from the East Indian Company times, right? It is a very old act where heavy, this kind of provisions, penalties were there. So this was rationalized. Even grievance redressal mechanisms particularly via adjudicating officials for determining various penalties have been set up as of now to give a kind of a relief. And finally, periodic revision of the fines and penalties are introduced, where the government is entitled to increase the fines and penalties by 10% almost every 3 years, right? So this will be keeping in time with the various, say, fines and offenses which are committed, and also how this will be charged over a period of time. As of now, the government is coming up with this Jan Vishwas 2.0 via the recent announcement of the same in the Union Budget 2025-2026. So where the finance minister has tried to rationalize various laws and the various provisions regarding penalties and fines in mainly the economic sector. Apart from this, we also have the various other sectors too. That will be seen in the due course of time, where all of the sectors will be included, or what else laws will be included. As of now, we have some sections such as taxation, labor laws, corporate affairs, environment compliances, intellectual property rights, where some of the offenses and the penalties are rationalized in nature, right? As if we can see here, for example, we have so many acts pertaining to labor, right? The PF Act of 1952, the ESI Act of 1948, and so on. So we have so many acts related to labor, right, where the current penalties are quite high. But as of now, as you can see, the penalties will be replacing the jail terms with higher fines and warnings, right? People will be giving warnings and then fine, right? Next, civil penalties with rectification timelines will be given, right? Shifting to fines and advisory notices will be given, where earlier it was imprisonment. So you see, over a period of time, we are trying to ease up this kind of offenses which are not that serious of nature, right? Always we have to keep in mind that punishment must be in proportion to the crime committed, right? So that is why government is bringing in such changes, where also the non-financial sector regulations by high-level committee for regulatory reforms will be taking place, right? So this is according to the non-financial sector surveillance that the government is trying to achieve. Also, the government is trying to achieve one nation, one business identity, where we understand for setting up any business, we need industry licenses, this license, that license, property license, GST number. We also need the PAN number of that particular company. We also need the CIN number. So this is creating a lot of confusion. So simply, as of now, the government is thinking that we can rationalize everything into one identity for the businesses. Next, we all know of the DigiLocker, right, where we have all our driving license, educational certificates, Aadhaar card in one app. So the government is also trying to visualize the same for our businesses, that is DigiLocker for businesses. Next, we also are trying to simplify the documents for setting up various establishments over a period of time. That is, for example, for setting up factories and everything, we know that we have a lot of bureaucracy, a lot of red tapeism. For that, also simplifying documents is now the priority. Also, the next provision, the government is taking a leaf out of the FSSAI's new rule, right, where FSSAI has mandated that in 1 year you can change the food standards, food rules only once. That means that this is leaving less scope for corruption, less scope for manipulation by the bureaucrats, or say by the public officials, by the government servants. That means that if you change the rules again and again and again, right, the government officials get more scope for corruption, versus if you change the rules only once in a year, you will not be having that amount of corruption, because the rules are set for at least 1 year till the next year, for which during this period of time, people, if they are having any issues, they can go to various grievance redressal aspects, judiciary and so on, so that the government have a particular rule one time at a particular time. So here we have to understand the government is right now also trying to adopt this FSSAI annual update model, that any kind of business rules, regulations and so on should not be changing within 1 year. We must be changing after 1 year or so, because we need some certainty over a period of time in our business. Finally, we also have this provision of Jan Vishwas 3.0, where this is nothing but the state governments must be coming up with such business friendly policies at the state level. Right, so Jan Vishwas 2.0 and 3.0 are the new age reforms that India needs over a period of time. Apart from this, we also need to do something else, right? We need to take a way forward, firstly, by timely implementation of this particular act whenever it is becoming an act after the bill has been passed. So firstly, we need to pass the bill, then this act must be implemented very strictly, and also we have to understand the more delays we are having, the more these under trial prisoners and the other peoples are suffering in this particular cause. Next, we also must be trying to restrict officials' power over a period of time. We have the various government officials who misuse these provisions. So a particular law, particular act must be trying to tie the hands of various corruption aspects of these particular officials. Next, we cannot ignore the role of technology in this particular aspect. We must be trying to automate various fees and penalties and fines for various offenders, right? And that is where the role of technology comes in, the role of AI and the various data analytics, right, comes into the picture. Next, we must also be ensuring that the various authorities, that the various aspects in the implementation of this act must not be facing any monetary issues, for which we must be ensuring that we have enough budget, enough funding for the implementation. And finally, the state government's roles are indispensable, because law and order, we know, is a state subject. At the end of the day, it depends on the state governments how to improve, particularly implement these provisions on the real ground. That is where the state governments must be learning from the various 4 principles from the VD report. Firstly, the principle is telling that we must be having a protection of value. That is, criminalization must protect a specific value vital for the existence of society, and not more or not less. That is, proportional punishment must be given. Also, secondly, protection against clear, identifiable and substantiable harm must be trying to be achieved. Thirdly, effective and efficient solution must be given, right? Not any kind of delays and so on. And finally, we have to understand a proportionate response must be given based on the gravity of the harm. So based on this, we have a mains practice question for all of you, and in such questions, in the introduction, which is an ID card of your answer, just like the preamble is the ID card of our constitution, do not hesitate to use some speech or say some good statements made by our prime ministers, finance ministers, and say other eminent people. So that is why we have to understand that attempting questions become highly important. That is why try to attempt at least 1 to 2 questions after every analyst. Now we'll be moving on to the simplified section. The central government is coming up with the National Wildlife Health Policy, and this is extremely important for prelims, specifically based on our environment, ecology and biodiversity, because this is related to the concept of One Health approach, right? And also for our GS2 and GS3, where we have the concepts of health and conservation of our environment. So firstly, when we talk about why we need a national wildlife health policy, which is not pertaining to human beings but to wildlife sector, because we have to understand firstly the lessons from the COVID-19 pandemic, where we know about the origins of the pandemic, right? While China loves to dispute the origins, but still we know that the pandemic of COVID actually originated from Wuhan province of China, where we have the evidences of the COVID-19 spreading from bats to human beings via contaminated foods, right? So that is where we understand that diseases right now increasingly are spreading from animals to human beings, which are known as zoonotic diseases, right? So these are the zoonotic diseases which are spreading from animals to human beings, particularly due to rapid urbanization, cutting down of forests and disrupting their food ecosystem or food chains. That is why animals and the diseases which are commonly present between the animals themselves, or sometimes the diseases do not even affect the animals, and the viruses and so on, they are actually present as a reservoir in the animals. Due to urbanization, due to deforestation, they come to our areas or we come to their areas, and the diseases and the infections, they are spreading as of now. It is expected that over a period of time, we can see much more severe diseases or the zoonotic diseases which spread from animals to human beings. That is where the importance of One Health comes to the picture. That is when whenever we are framing any health policies, we must not be thinking only about us or human beings. If we are framing some vaccination policies, if we are framing some, say, disease surveillance policies, we must be keeping in mind the animals also, the ecosystem also, the ecology also, the environment also, and the human beings. These are the three important things of, or three important pillars, principles of the One Health approach. Here we have the National One Health Mission under the Prime Minister Science and Technology Innovation Council here. So where we have the implementation, surveillance, monitoring of all the zoonotic diseases in the country, where the government has actually set up various laboratories across states, across districts to monitor the outbreak and the spread of the zoonotic diseases at a very rapid rate, right? Because we have to understand that 60% of the infectious diseases emanate from animals as of now, and wildlife, forests, right, they actually serve as a reservoir of the pathogens, where if the pathogens are within their bodies, within the wild animals' bodies, they are not posing too much of issues. But whenever we have human-animal interactions, this disease is spread from the wildlife to our bodies. So that is where we have to also keep track of the diseases which are spreading between the wildlife too, that is between the animals too, where we have had many instances where due to viral infections there are instances of lions, tigers succumbing to death. So that is where the Central Zoo Authority has come up with this National Wildlife health policy, where we have to understand the various stakeholders of this One Health mission under the Government of India, under this National One Health mission, right, where we have so many agencies, right, to actually try to monitor the conditions here. So that is why we have to understand the Central Zoo Authority has tried to have this overall policy for the country, correct? Next, we have to understand that the details of the policies are very important from the prelims perspective. Now, the Central Zoo Authority is right now collaborating with the principal scientific advisor and also the IIT Bombay, and also some private consultancy firms such as E and Y, who are trying to work on this policy formulation for the wildlife health. Now here, the National Referral Center for Wildlife, right, whose foundation stone was laid by our Prime Minister, is now will be serving as a key hub of the new framework on the wildlife health management, where it will be trying to investigate wildlife deaths, mortalities due to abnormal diseases or outbreak events of various say diseases between the animals themselves, and also facilitate disease diagnostic treatments for the animals at a very faster rate. And that is why it is actually right now considered to be in the future as a nodal authority for disease surveillance for the wildlife animals. Also, a national wildlife health database will be implemented, and a wildlife health information system will also be recommended based on the recommendations based on the advices of the say IIT Bombay, the private consultancy firms, and also the Government of India via the two institutions of Central Zoo Authority and the principal scientific advisor. So they have recommended setting up a database and information center, and also satellite diagnostic labs, which are nothing but the various laboratories which will be present remotely and locally at the various wildlife locations in our country, so that there will be proper amount of vets who will be taking care of the various wildlife animals suffering from the diseases. And apart from this, we also have various other working groups who have given recommendation on various themes such as capacity building, regulatory framework, and so on. So with this, now we'll be moving on to the next one. Now students, we have heard about many people facing taxation issues, right, at the end of the financial years. It is very surprising right now a government institution is actually facing the taxation issues and facing various notices by the income tax authorities. So we'll be looking this very briefly. First let us look at the National Mission for Clean Ganga. Now we know that this is the initiative which is actually under the Ministry of Jal Shakti, where this particular mission is trying to reduce the pollution and the various pollutants in the river Ganga. We know that the river Ganga in the previous few decades was actually heavily polluted because of the various crematoriums, right, present along the Ganga region, because Ganga is considered as a very holy river, due to which we have many crematoriums on the various banks. After this, we have various sewage disposal in the river Ganga, lots of plastic pollution in the same. That is why we have this particular mission to clean up Ganga, and also to maintain minimum ecological flow, to maintain a proper amount of natural flow of the river, to maintain aquatic life and have sustainable development within the region too. Now, what was the previous aspect was that, we had a National Ganga River Basin Authority set up under the Environmental Protection Act of 1986. Later in 2016, this was replaced by the National Ganga Council under the National Mission for Clean Ganga. And here when we talk about the entire fund, it is having 20,000 crore fund which will be implemented over 10 years. And here 150 new sewage treatment projects, building say new infrastructure, or say improving the existing crematoriums and toilets alongside the Ganga villages and towns, and this will be headed by the National Mission for Clean Ganga. This initiative is actually known as the Namami Gange. So this is actually much more better than the previous plans which were actually under the National Ganga River Basin Authority, which were actually planned across the various state governments, where due to improper implementation, the effective cleaning up of Ganga was not envisaged. That is why we came up with this National Mission for Clean Ganga, where this is having a 5-tier structure. Mainly we have the National Ganga Council at the top, where the Prime Minister of India is the head. Then we have the Empowered Task Force under the Minister of Jal Shakti, right? Then we have the Governing Council and the Executive Committee, which are both by one single person known as a Director General. And here this particular Director General must be an additional secretary in the Government of India, maybe belonging to the IAS office. Maybe one of our audience is the same in the future, right? And also we have the Executive Committee, which can be planning projects up to 1,000 crore rupees for the cleaning up and maintenance of the Ganga. After this, we have the further next 2 levels. We have the State Program Management Groups, which is looking at the same implementation of state governments, and also the District Ganga Committees. Now here, what is the issue all about? Firstly, we have to understand that the National Mission for Clean Ganga is actually having a tax liability of 243 crores, and the IT department have been again and again and issuing notices. Maybe there will be one time where they will be even having raid, just like the Ajay Devgan raid movie, right? So here what happened, that initially we have to understand the story very simply in very short, because too much of details in this are not important. Just first understand this. Initially this particular mission was registered as society on August 2011. But after this 2016 amendment, right, we have to understand this mission was upgraded to an authority on October 2016 under the Environment Protection Act of 1986. Now this transition, despite this transition is actually entitled this particular National Mission for Clean Ganga for various tax concessions. But despite the upgradation to authority here, to authority status, the tax authority have been sending tax notices of this amount to the mission. Correct? Because mainly there are some technical issues regarding tax filing. For example, PAN classification issue is there for this particular mission, right? Also, the particular mission is now contesting the IT department's say regulations, such as they are trying to contesting the assessment orders, where the previous financial years and the tax assessment, right, they are trying to dispute that. They're also requesting PAN status change, so that they can now reflect that they have upgraded to an authority. Right now they are no longer registered as a society. Also the authority is trying to revise its income tax returns, because if you are a government authority, you will be getting many exemptions under section 10 subclause 46 of the Income Tax Act. So that is where we have to keep this in mind. But according to this National Mission for Clean Ganga, one of the most important issues why this issue is taking place at all is actually the faceless assessment process. What is this all about? Just simply understand that if you are a person who is filing income tax, right, to the government of India. Earlier, what used to happen, there used to be another government official who will be scrutinizing your details and so on. Right now, what is being happening, that obviously some official is scrutinizing your detail, but that official or your name and that official's names and all the other details are not known. Everything is done digitally. So that is why we have some disconnect between the government official and the taxpayer. While this is good, that is actually a very good initiative that reduces the scope of corruption, but also this is another side of the coin where we miss out some details in real life, where the mission is right now facing this issue. So it has to be seen what will be taking place. This is a very interesting thing, but as of now we will be concluding this here and moving on to the next one. Now this next article will be giving us an opportunity to revise our polity. Here we have the aspect of demand for grants for railways. So that is why we'll be looking at the various types of grants. Now here for prelims for Indian polity and governance, extremely important because there are PYQs based on the types of grants, and also for GS2 it is important for parliament and state legislatures and how they function. Also for GS3 we have some important facts and data of the Indian railways. Now to start away, we'll be starting with what is supplementary demand for grants. Simply, all types of grants are generally in addition to the union budget, because simply just like your pocket money can finish all of a sudden, government and the various departments, even the various ministries, they can run out of funds in the middle of the year. That is why there are many ways of which how they can ask for the excess amount of funds, right? For example, there is a particular process here for the supplementary demand for grants. What is the process? For example, imagine the Ministry of Environment has run out of funds. So the concerned Ministry of Environment here will be giving a proposal that I need this X amount, and this X amount proposal will be sent to the Ministry of Finance. Ministry of Finance official, they will be reviewing that if at all that X amount is needed by the Ministry of Environment or not. If they think that okay, if it is actually needed, then this particular thing will be reviewed and prepared as a document, and it will be presented to the Parliament. And finally the Parliament will be deciding whether this will be allocated and utilized or not. Correct? So this is why how this supplementary demand for grants are originated, where these are the various expenses which will be covering, which are not anticipated in the budget, because simply the budget funds have been insufficient. And here the grant is finally passed by the Parliament, and what are the types of expenditure which can originate under the same? We can have a new project or new initiative for which we need new funds. We can also have excess expenditure for which again we need new funds, and also some token demand. For example, say the Ministry of Environment have earlier said that we need 100 crores for wetlands, but now the ministry is telling that okay, this 100 crore we can allocate for forest conservation. Right? So we can also reallocate some funds from one head to another header. So that is also some token demand for which we can have this particular thing. Next, for the parliamentary approval, we have to understand we need the approval from the Lok Sabha. The Rajya Sabha are actually free to discuss it, but they neither can vote approve or reject on this particular thing. And here we also have to understand that this is the money that is drawn from the Consolidated Fund of India. Can anyone tell me what is the article number which is pertaining to CFI? Next, we have to focus on what are the other types of grants. Now we have firstly the additional grant. Now see, additional grants are granted whenever a need has arisen during the current financial year for additional funds, right, for some new expenditures, right, which have not been contemplated or thought of in the budget of that particular year. So that is why we need these additional grants. Next, when we talk about the excess grants, it is actually granted whenever we are talking about the money spent during a financial year in excess. It is voted by the Lok Sabha after that particular financial year. And also, before the demand for this excess grants is actually presented to submitted to the Lok Sabha, this must be approved by the Public Accounts Committee of our Parliament, right? Next, we have the vote of credit, where this is actually given during whenever we have some unexpected demand. So you can tell that this is a kind of a blank check given to the government. Next, we have exceptional grant for special purposes, and here it is actually not part of the current service of any financial year. And at the end, we have the token grant, where is actually serving as a, say, reappropriation to another header to another news service. And obviously when we talk about related constitutional provisions, we have Article 115 where we have supplementary, additional or excess grants. We have Article 116 where we have vote on account, votes of credit and exceptional grants for our prelims revision. Now here when we talk about the article in detail more, so I need to look at the recent data which is coming from the speech of our railway minister. So the railway minister has told that the Lok Sabha has allocated 2.52 lakh crore of rupees to the railways, and this is a historic decision. And here we get some data that the largest expenditure component from the railways was staff cost, followed by energy cost and financing cost. So there can be an ascending descending order of question in the UPSC prelims based on the cost, right? Also, this can be used for your mains information too. Next, the total income of the railways is approximately 2.78 lakh crore. But we have to take into consideration the various amount of subsidies that the government is giving for the passenger fares. So here we have to understand that the railways recovers only 53% of the cost of the passenger fares, because 47% is subsidized. That is amounting to 60,000 crore annually. That brings to the cost of transporting a passenger per kilometer to 1.38 rupees. And this is actually much more less than Pakistan, Bangladesh and Sri Lanka, right? So this is where we have to understand that our Indian railways is actually very economical in nature too. So now let us look at some of the PYQs from 2015 and 2012. So please do solve this because prelims is near and I want all of your answers in the comment. Recently, the Supreme Court will be deciding in the near future, very recently, if Lokpal has powers over judges. This is a very important article for prelims where we need to look into the aspect of Lokpal, right? This is serving as the ombudsman, which is actually a concept which arose in the very first time in Sweden in 1809. So here the main thing about this is that it is a watchdog of corruption in the government. So here the Lokpal will be a very important institution for any country. In India, where we have to understand this is a statutory body under the Lokpal and the Lok Ayuktas Act of 2013. Can you let me know in India what is a very interesting background, or what was actually the main thing that brought Lokpal Act in the very first place in India? Now, the main mandate is that it will be inquiring into the allegations of corruption mainly for the government officials, right? And even the various ministers and the various bureaucrats, they are not immune from this act. Well, when we talk about the Lokpal organizational structure, it is having a chairperson and plus 8 members, out of which 4 members must be from the judiciary or having a judicial background, where the chairperson must be a former Chief Justice of India or a Supreme Court judge or any eminent person, correct? And the condition of the services must be with reference to the status of the Chief Justice of India, the salaries and so on, right? With reference to the judicial members, it can be, a former Supreme Court judge or High Court Chief Justice only, right? And also we have to understand 50% of the other 4 members must be from SC or ST or OBC or minority or women communities. And the term that will be served, they will be serving will be maximum of 5 years or 70 years of their age. And the selection committee for the same will be consisting of the Prime Minister, Lok Sabha Speaker, Lok Sabha Leader of Opposition, Chief Justice of India or any Supreme Court judge or eminent jurist. For eminent jurist, this person must be having particularly good experience in corruption cases, vigilance cases over a period of time. And here, when we talk about the complaint under the Lokpal Act, this is pertaining to the Prevention of Corruption Act of 1988, and there is no restriction on the origin of the complaint. So anyone can complain here, right? Also, the preliminary inquiry can be done by its Lokpal's own inquiry wing and also by CBI or others, whatever the Lokpal authority will be deciding. Also, the central government servants, they will be subjected to CVC or Central Vigilance Commission. And there are some exceptions for the Prime Minister, where in matters of international relations, external and internal security, public order, atomic energy and space, the Prime Minister cannot be inquired, but for other matters, Prime Minister can only be inquired into or say held for corruption charges when at least 2/3 of the members they agree to inquire into the complaints. So here the main thing is regarding the powers of the Lokpal, right? So here we have to understand the powers of the Lokpal is that they have superintendents that they can give direction to CBI, and also the investigating authority, they cannot be, or say the officer, they cannot be transferred without the Lokpal approval. The next is that they can authorize CBI for search and seizure operations. They can have the inquiry wing, where this particular wing is having the powers of civil court. Next, the confiscation of assets, proceeds, receipts and benefits arising from corruption charges in special conditions, they can also be doing that. Finally, recommendation of transfers or suspensions of public service in cases of corruption, also the Lokpal is having the authority. Then giving directions to prevent destruction of records, right, to actually keep up the investigation, this is also one of the provisions. And finally, they have to present annual reports to the president. So this is how it is, ensuring the strict powers of the Lokpal. Here we have to understand, when it comes to the recent matter, this is a matter which is pertaining to the Supreme Court regarding a 2025 January Lokpal order, where the Lokpal actually tried to inquire into the corruption charges of a High Court judge, of a serving High Court judge. So right now the Supreme Court is inquiring if Lokpal has the authority to look into judges or not. Right? So this is the entire thing. So here we have to understand the special bench of the Supreme Court. They will now be looking at this recent case where Lokpal has actually given a green signal to look into the corruption charges of a High Court judge. So according to various experts, it is being said that if Lokpal has the power to inquire into the corruption charges of a High Court judge or judge of a Supreme Court or judge for that matter, it will be affecting the independence of the judiciary, particularly because there are concerns by the experts that Lokpal maybe is actually controlled by the central government, right? So here, based on these matters, there is a particular case known as Veeraswamy case of 1991, where the matter of judges being arrested has been clarified. So the Supreme Court is discussing whether we can arrest judges for corruption cases, and that is enough or not, whether Lokpal should be inquiring more after the arrest or not. Correct? And also the Supreme Court is telling that, or say the various lawyers arguing for this matter are telling that already for proved misbehavior or incapacity, we have the impeachment proceedings for the various judges, right, of the High Court and the Supreme Court. So for this, we already have this impeachment motion or impeachment proceedings aspect, for which we should not be needing the Lokpal interference. This is according to the various experts which are commenting. Now it has to be seen what the Supreme Court will be deciding, but in the meantime, till Supreme Court decides, you solve this PYQ in the comments. Finally, in the last article, we'll be looking into the recent rank that India got in the free speech survey published by a US-based think tank known by the name of Future of Free Speech. Right? So this is an US institution which is actually trying to rank the various countries based on the free speech and say the extent of free speech or freedom of free speech in various countries, where India got a score of 62.6, right? Where mainly the Scandinavian countries dominated the ranking, with Norway, Denmark finishing at the top of this ranking, where Indonesia, Malaysia, Pakistan showed the biggest improvements, right? I don't know where it is commendable or laughable at Pakistan's approach, right? But we have to understand they actually remain at the lower level of the ranking too, right? So we can say that Pakistan being at the last, they have tried to study little before the exams, right? So this is why we have to understand that even some authoritarian leaning nations such as Hungary, Venezuela, they scored high. Right? So we have to understand, maybe despite being authoritarian, there is freedom of speech in the country. And here we have to understand that 37% of Indians supported government-sponsored censorship. So here we have to understand that survey which was conducted in October 2024, it revealed that more countries have seen a declines rather than improvement in free speech from 2021 since the pandemic. While even countries such as US, Japan, Israel, they have seen drops in the, say, this particular right to free speech, right, which is actually one of the main important things for any sustainable and vibrant democracies in the entire world. So with this, I thank you all for being a very patient audience. Please do not forget to attempt the quiz which is following up right now. All the best of luck till we meet again. Thank you.